Alright, so let's look briefly at the effects that are Photoshop based. They're called Photoshop effects because they are raster based, so they're based on affecting pixels. And so just understand when you apply a Photoshop effect to vector shapes in Illustrator, it becomes a raster based image because it's essentially a group of pixels. But these are great for adding variety and texture to backgrounds and objects. And we'll kind of go through that. So to find these effects in the effect menu, you can see we went through most of the Illustrator effects, but then right below that, Illustrator has incorporated a lot of effects that you would find in Photoshop. Alright, so I'm going to start by clicking on this first one, the artistic. And let's go ahead and just explore some of the main categories of Photoshop effects. So we can see artistic actually has a lot of different effects associated with that one. I'll just go ahead and choose the first one because that's going to bring up kind of this preview window. And in this preview window, we can go through all the different parts of the artistic effects. So this is the colored pencil, and we have a lot of different options for the size of the pencil, the stroke pressure, the paper brightness. And I'm not going to spend time actually going through all the different parts of this, but I just want to point out the process of kind of experimenting and going through these. I'll just go through and look at some of these and see their effect. I like this film grain. I think it gives it a cool texture that can be used sometimes for like grass or sand, fresco, neon glow, paint dabs. So this one's giving it more of a painterly effect. Plastic wrap makes it kind of look like it's made out of liquid. Poster edges, so it puts an outline on your paths. So this one can be handy for making it look kind of like from a comic book. Okay. Rough pastels, kind of blurs everything out. So go ahead and experiment, choose something, and try to just have a log of these effects. I'm going to go ahead and choose the film grain, and I'll get something a little more subtle, and I'll click OK. Alright, and if we zoom in, hey, we can see it pixelated all of the inside of that vector path. Alright, let's move on to the next one. So these ones I actually use quite often and are used quite often for illustration. So these are the blurs. Let's go ahead and try this first one, the Gaussian Blur. Let's get an effect where we have kind of a mountainscape, and we want the farthest set of mountains in back to be blurry, and then a more sharper mountain in the front. So let's choose this front mountain first. We'll go to Effect, Blur, and Gaussian Blur, and let's do something really subtle. So let's preview that. You can see it's feathering the edge. We'll click OK. Now I'll click on the next one. I'll go into Effect, and instead of going all the way down into Blur, Illustrator kind of logs the last effect that you were using, and we can either apply that same blur we just made, or we can choose the Gaussian Blur from that menu again, and we can set a different blur. So this one I'll increase, and I'll click OK. Then I'll try this last one. So Effect, and it's already loaded up here, and I'll go even further. Preview that and click OK. Now we have this atmospheric effect using those blurs. All right, let's try this next one. So it's a group of shapes, and we're going to try the Radial Blur. So it's going to kind of blur this along a center point, and we want to make it look like it's almost spinning. So I'll go Effect, Blur, and Radial Blur. So one thing I don't like about this is that it doesn't give you a live preview of what's going on, but we can kind of see here it's showing us how much it's going to distort the vector paths. So I'll go ahead and choose something like 13 or 15. We can choose how it blurs it. So right now by default it's on spin. We can choose zoom, like it's speeding up and taking off, but I want to keep it as spin. And then we can choose the quality. So we can do it as a draft, good, or we could do best. I'll just keep it as good, click OK, and yeah, it's kind of got the effect as though it is spinning. All right, let's move on to the next one. So I'll click this group of shapes, Effect, and brush strokes. And this one's really similar to the artistic. This one's going to give it more of a kind of handmade quality, so you can kind of go through and explore some kind of effect that appeals to you. I'm going to go ahead and go with this sprayed stroke effect and click OK. Alright, and let's try the next one. This one is Distort. I'll go to Effect and Distort. And this one, it works based on the values. So it's going to start affecting those values. This one, the glass makes it look like it's on some kind of rippled glass. And then the ocean ripple is similar to that. It's as though this image is floating on some rippling water. So I'll go ahead and choose that one, Ocean Ripple. I can increase the magnitude of the ripples, like that, and click OK. Okay, so moving along, let's try our sketch filter. So I'll select that, effect, and sketch. And like the artistic and brush strokes, now I'm going to get a bunch of different options, but it's going to extract all of my color values and just give me a grayscale preview. Except for this last one, the water paper. I like the stamp. I feel this one has potential to be a pretty useful filter. It's kind of like the ink outlines. But I think in the end I like using the halftone filter. And we can actually change the pattern. So I could just make this a line pattern. I can make it a circle, or concentric circles, or the typical dot pattern for halftones. So I'll bring this all the way into the contrast into 0 so I can see more of that. And I'll increase the size of those dots a little bit more. And I'll click OK. Alright, so next one, stylize. Effect, stylize, and we get one option, which is our glowing edges. So if you want this neon looking Tron effect, this is the effect you would use. I'm going to increase the brightness, and I'll click OK. Alright, and these next two I think are one of the most used ways of adding texture to your pieces. So we'll kind of go through that. Let's try the pixelate one. So I'll just select this gradient shape. I'll go to Effect, Pixelate, and we'll start on, and we'll try the color halftone. And unless you know a thing or two about working with channels and the radius of these halftones, just keep these all by default. I don't have time to go into how to adjust these, but for now we'll just keep this by default and click OK. And now we can see it's broken up that gradient into these halftone dots. So red, large red dots getting smaller, and then the other way, these large yellow dots that are in the background getting smaller, moving this way. So that's one effect we could do with Pixelate. Let's try another one. So I'll just keep that selected, Pixelate. So I'll do Command Z to get back to my regular gradient, and I'll go to the effect again, Pixelate and crystallize. Pixelate and crystallize. And it's going to actually put a fractal breakup of all those colors. It's hard to see here, but I'll just move the cell size to around 68%. Click OK, and you can see it's broken up the gradient into a series of fractal shapes, kind of random. All right, I'll go ahead and undo that. Command Z, and let's try two more. So mezzotint, okay, and we can choose the type of dots. So this is kind of similar to the halftone, but it's more of a random kind of sand-like pattern. You can also choose lines, short, medium, and long. You can also do short strokes, medium strokes, long strokes. I'm going to go ahead and do medium dots. So it gives the effect of sand, just similar to our grain filter. I'll do Command Z, and let's try one more. Effect, Pixelate, and Pointillize. And this one is giving us multiple different colored shapes, but like pointillism, as we stand back and look at it, the overall effect is a move from one color to the other. Click OK on that, and you can see we chose large cells for that. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the color halftone and click OK. Alright, and let's try this last one. So let's try a texture effect on this green gradient. I'll go to Effect, Texture, and I'll choose the first one, and this one brings me back to this preview window, so it's a little easier to kind of go through these different textures. This one gives a look of kind of an embossed kind of texture against a wall, and choose the contrast of how deep these little crevices are, for the crack depth. I can make those very shallow too, space those out more. Move on to the next one, to grain. So this is one I actually use quite a bit. It's just giving it a little bit of noise. Increase the contrast so it's a little easier to see the lighter and darker values. You can also change the grain type. So this is one I use quite often, a soft grain type. You can choose these other more extreme ones, clumped, contrasty, enlarged. This one is a very popular one. So a grain, that's the enlarged type, stippled. And these next ones like to blow out the values a little too much, so you need to adjust the contrast on those. You can also do mosaic tiles, patchwork, which is similar to the mosaic tiles but more rectilinear. You can do stained glass. This one is very interesting. You can break up a shape into a bunch of different facets. You can change that border thickness to be very thin. And we can change the light intensity. We can also do texturizer. So this one gives the look of paper or brick or canvas and sandstone. So this one's a nice subtle texture. You can increase the amount of texture on that and the spacing. So it's going to increase how much of that you see or how zoomed in you are on that. And I like that. Let's stick with that. Click OK. Alright, so guys, that's just a really general overview of working with the Photoshop effects. And they just require a lot of experimentation and and multiple practice using them on multiple projects to really narrow in on the ones that work for you.